Right, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Rob. Interesting you should say that, actually, because when we think about what's been in the headlines over the last couple of years, it's all about third-party cookies, and that's where we need to make that's where there's often a misassociation. So we're here today to talk about third-party data, which has its nuances. So, look, I'm Danny Holmes. I'm from Experian. We're here to talk about third-party data. Is it gone, garbage, or entering a golden age? And we have Matt.
Hey, guys. Yeah, Matt Wilke. I'm from Media Plus. We used to be called Total Media. I don't know how I found myself here, to be honest, but I'm here to trying to give an agency sort of point of view on the first and third party data.
Yeah, and on that note, look, Matt is not a client of Experian. We don't have any business. We've asked Matt to join here because he's independent, he's neutral, he's very vocal, and he's very passionate about this industry as well. So we thought we'd add value to the discussion.
It's a nice way of saying I'm.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to have to turn away because this is too far to the floor down here. So, look, what's the perception of third-party data? So, look, it's been mixed, not great. I think it does depend on where you sit in the industry, whether you are in creative or media planning or execution. But you certainly faced some challenges in the last couple of years. Look, I've only been in Experian for 2 years, and I see there's a real mixed view on what it is, where it is, how to access it, etc. So one of those perceptions or misperceptions is that it's gone. So again, this is down to really the demise or the slow and somewhat painful demise of third-party cookies. People associate therefore the slow demise of third-party data, which is not the case. Also, channel fragmentation. I think there's a lot of new channels like CTV who use they don't use third-party cookies. They use different identifiers, and so people don't know the role of third-party data within some of these channels. And also rising regulation. So privacy and regulation is really coming down hard. So a lot of the stuff that's out in the market is not necessarily compliant or doesn't withstand the stress testing of certain brands. And then it's garbage. So the open market has become saturated with poor quality third-party data. So, again, this comes down to cookies. When I think they've been creating segments that are somewhat dubious, there's a lot of overlap. There's not a lot of credibility, and it's somewhat black box. So a lot of people have turned their back on some of these segments. And then it's also because it's been driving out wastage, poor ROI. So people have turned to things like contextual, which is great for a good environment to be in, and it's great because it's compliant, but it sometimes lacks scale, and also it doesn't allow you to give that personalized message or ad based on the audience. This is my Matt reminder cue. So Matt, can you give me your perception on these two perceptions?
Right, so yeah, I do have notes because I was actually lucky to see the questions last night. I snuck it in. So I think, yeah, the perceptions that come from the same reality. We were over-reliant on third-party data for a long time. And I think that when we're talking about gone, what we're saying there is we're referring to the loss of cookie-based targeting, which pulled the rug from under the lazy, low-quality data. Good third-party doesn't disappear. Just what we probably shouldn't have been using from the start, in my opinion. And when we start talking about garbage, some of it was agencies and brands. We were constantly being sold segments that sounded smart, but the problem was that they were locked in and they couldn't perform. So that led to a lot of waste and distrust. And I think that's what's put a lot of us off of sort of like really trying to actually even tackle the data question sometimes. But I think the turning point is now here. And it's work that we also, the other great thing is now we obviously also have the tools that are able to prove if the data we're buying is actually working or not. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Matt. So with that, there's been a renewed focus on first-party data, but it often lacks scale and breadth. But that's where quality third-party data fills that void. So this is why we think there is a new dawn for third-party data. So why is it a new dawn? So I think new standards have been set. So look, Experian really did lead the way on this back in 2024, where we fought for the legal clarity on the use of third-party data in marketing, where one of the outcomes was that legitimate interest was deemed as a lawful basis when using third-party data for marketing purposes, when certain standards, of course, have been met. So I think this clarity was needed for brands to know what they can and can't do with third-party data moving forward. The other one is garbage is on the way out. So again, I think this is linked to third-party cookies. If you think now that 70% of the open web is unaddressable by cookies, so it's less available. Technically, or a lot of the segments are less robust, less accurate, so people have taken them off plans and turned away from them. It's also because of, when I mentioned before about compliance, it doesn't quite meet those compliance stress tests, so they've also been taken out of off radars. And the other one, then, there's been a ton of innovation to connect better, and we'll see a lot of that at Madfest today. We were at Cannes a couple of weeks ago, and there's a ton there as well. So whether that's contextual, whether that's geo, or that's ID-based solutions, which we'll talk about a bit today. Again, cue Matt. So Matt, how have you felt the conversation shift, and what innovative stuff have you seen? So
yeah, the shift is absolutely real. I'm sure that sort of brands and agencies on the floor here today would agree that what's sort of happening is brands know what they want to do, and that they want to do something with data, but it's just not how to talk about it. So 3 key changes that are sort of happening on the ground are from a relevancy point of view. So it's no longer the biggest taxonomy wins. So SSPs or anyone that comes in and just says, I've got everything, it's not going to be the sell anymore or the win for us, specifically agencies, I would say. Infrastructure has come a long, long way. I was saying earlier that we now have the means and the ways to actually test and stress test the data that we're buying. So ID groups, clean rooms have really grown over the past year, especially access to those sort of things and letting us connect the dots. And then, of course, the big one that sort of isn't spoken about a lot, but respect. So what I mean by that is respect for the consumer, for the quality. So the days of opaque data and the days of sort of like, oh, it's an audience that sounds good, that's gone. Yep. So those sort of stitched together data sets, they just don't cut it. Yep. So a perfect example that I thought when I was reading through all of it last night was that geo-persona linking. So what I mean by that is layering real-world sort of data on top of movement of people. So behavioral or transactional insights. That's the sort of innovation that I think is coming a long way in helping media agencies do their planning a lot better, yep. And actually having a much stronger and better conversation with our clients about strategy as well. Yep. Yeah. Excellent.
Thank you, New. So, with that, are we entering the golden era of third-party data? You can also thank Ema, who's in the back there, for some of this imagery, which you'll see a lot of in the next slides. Completely off Experian brand, but talking about off-brand, what is a credit score company talking about marketing for? So, firstly, a couple of we're going to do some myths and some morphs, because we want to keep it to M's, but morphs is transformations. So the myths, so yes, we're the leading credit bureau, but we're also a trusted marketing and insights an identity partner. No, we're not just Mosaic. It might be the UK's #1 segmentation tool, but it's only a small segment of what we do. And no, we're not just demographics either. There is a ton of stuff, which I'll touch on.
It sounds like the things I accused you of the first time I ever had a call with Danny.
We'll come on to that question. Yeah. So, so where have we morphed? So where are we now? So we have a 360 view of consumers. So we know the who. So they are your demographics, your segmentations, etc. The where, so that geographic lens, which is important across every different marketing channel. The what, so we have access to around sort of 4 million bank accounts in the UK, not access to as it sounds, but it's a compliant level, we promise. So we know where people are spending and what they're spending it on. We then know why, so we work with YouGov, Kantar and the likes to inject attitudinal data into our central sort of data repository. And then we have the when, so we have trigger information, life stages, when people might be in the market for a certain product or service. And then dynamic data. So the dynamic data really fits within this 360-degree view, but I just wanted to surface it or pull it out because a lot of the time data can be static, but our dynamic data or transactional mobility data is always moving, it's always fresh, and it really keeps the pulse of the market as it is today. And then we're on identity and connectivity technology, so we can connect offline and digital data into a single resolution, which, again, we will expand on. Matt, on that note, so we met about a month ago, and so when we met, we ran you through what Experian are doing now. Is it fair to say it's been a seismic shift from your previous perception of who Experian were?
Yeah. So I just moved the chair so everyone can see the brilliant picture. You still can't see it properly. Yeah, totally fair. Before our chats, I was probably exactly the same, exactly what Danny was alluding to there. I thought that what the hell is this sort of credit company doing, talking about data to me and everything else, and especially the mosaic segmentation. I was sort of like, oh yeah, heard about this, seen this, done this, tried this, move on. But I think what I've noticed, what's actually been built here is a sort of an identity graph situation. And the way I see it is it's connecting the sort of first-party data, transactions, households, the sort of what people are actually doing, and turning that into actionable and trustable sort of like audiences, right? So that's the change that I've seen, or what's my perceptions change has been. Crucially, I think what I have noticed, and I mean I will again reiterate, I'm not employed by Experian, but crucially, you've matched the capability with, and this is a big one for our clients, especially compliance. So a lot of our clients are in the health, the finance, and that sort of vertical, and really what we have to be a lot more sort of cognizant of these days is the compliance and the data that we're actually using. Is it clean? Is it actually legal? And clients are a lot more onto that than they were, say, 5 years ago. Yeah.
Great. All good to hear, Matt. All good to hear. Right, so I just we're going to talk in a minute to 5 examples of where third-party data generally can be used, whether that is through Experian or any other brand. But I just want to level set on what we're talking about when we say third-party data and some of those definitions as these 5 examples are applied. So firstly, we've got third-party insight, right? So third-party insight, again, Experian has a ton of that. We've just gone over that. But you've also got likes of Sagacity, Sakana. There's a ton of good data providers out there who have got good quality assets that have survived the last 5 or 10 years. You then got third-party IDs, so the likes of IP address, hashed emails, etc. These aren't necessarily owned by anybody, apart from the likes of LiveRamp or ID5, who do have theirs. But generally, there are a lot of these, and they come in and out of the market as the market moves. Also then offline, so name, address, mobile, etc. The bringing together of these 2 data assets, so those identifiers and the insight, is, in our words, identity resolution. And there are various different resolutions of that that are active and available in the market. If we talk to ours, and why we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk, is that we have a 360 view that we just described there a moment ago, but we have that of 52 million adults in the UK, so that's 95% of the UK population. We also have 500 million device IDs, right? Or 25 million emails, and then there's also a ton of other name, address, postcodes that have been the kind of legacy products of Experian for the last 15, 20 years. Or say 30 years, actually. Experian's been around a long time. And then we resolve at household level. So that means that we match digital identifiers and offline identifiers and the insight into a household, right? And we do that with a success rate of 72% when we look at the digital identifiers into households, and 95% when we look at the offline into those households. So that's great, but how does it help me? So as I say, we want to talk about 5 ways that third-party data solves for your biggest marketing headaches. So number 1, data onboarding and modeling. So some of the problems, you've got heaps, I'm going to look down here actually because I'm not going to keep turning, heaps of offline first-party data, but unable to onboard it into the digital channels you want, or you've got poor match rates for existing uploads, or small but valuable sets of first-party data. So some of the solutions that this brings when we can match offline data and digital IDs and offline IDs into a household is we can firstly, well, I guess this one's less so, but this first one is how to cleanse and widen your CRM to increase match rate. So what do I mean by that? So cleanse, I think we see about 10 to 15% of a CRM is degraded each year by people unfortunately passing away or people moving. So firstly, get some of that out or get it refreshed. Widen just means, so say you've got Joe at hotmail.com, but that's what you have, but that's not necessarily what Joe logs into Facebook for. We can give Joe at gmail.com, Joe at yahoo.com to increase match rates into some of those typical channels. And then you can match your customer IDs to the digital ID that you need for activation. So simply put, Joe at hotmail.com, we can assign that or match that to a household and then find, let's say, for example, an IP address which might need to be pushed into the likes of Freewheel for CTV activation. So it allows for offline data to be pushed into multi-channel. And you just pick the ID that's required for the channel that you want to activate into. And then model to expand. So you might have a huge CRM or you might have a small one. So if you have a CRM of only 5,000, but they're really valuable to you, then you can use third-party data providers to model that 5,000 against and go as high or as low as you want on that volume. So you could model it to 50,000 to 5 million, depending on the strength of that model. Experian offers that, but of course there are other data suppliers that work in the market to offer modeling. Understand your customers on a deeper level. So you've got limited knowledge about who your customers really are. So enrich your CRM to better understand. This is not new. This enrichment has been happening for many, many years. Append different third-party data suppliers, trusted, credible third-party data suppliers to your offline data, so you get a better understanding of who they are, so you know how to communicate with them and where to communicate with them. You've got lots of website traffic, but no insight on who's behind it. Now, I think this one actually is relatively unique to us, but I'm sure someone in the room can come and tell me after that it's not. Enrich known or unknown website visits for the same. So if you think the first example there is almost taking offline data and enriching it with our insight, this second one is actually going the other way. So it's taking digital data. So in this case, let's say an IP address. At the end of a month, as an example, a brand could send us a bulk of IP addresses. We match those to households, and we return a report to say, this is exactly who's been on your website of that month. So you have a profile and enrichment of unknown website traffic, not just of your CRM. And then activate at scale. So you've got, Matt talked before about, generally the how you find quality audience segments, and it's not just all about the scale that's open to you, but it's of the quality of those. So you can't find the quality audience segments at scale. So you can now buy off-the-shelf audiences that are built offline and bridged into digital. So these are not those dubious segments that are scraped and pieced together through online behavior, but they're built by credible offline suppliers, which can then be bridged using this ID graph technology into digital channels. And you need niche audience builds, so you can build and activate custom audiences, right? So let's say you identify that there are 50,000 households in the UK that spend at a particular brand that's of interest or is a competitor to your brand. You can take those 50,000, identify the households, and then we're using this ID graph technology, find the IDs that are relevant to activate against those that audience. Right, and only able to activate in certain channels. So I think this is kind of touched on really, but you can activate across channels, whether that's first or third-party data. So I hear a lot about first-party data only being used in Google and Meta, but this now opens this up. You can go, this can go into programmatic, into CTV, digital out of home, and it can be scaled across those channels as well. So whether that's the first or third-party data. Matt, I have to remind myself what my question was to you now. So we've only, these are often core to a brand's first-party data strategy. How ready are brands to maximize on their first-party data, and how valuable do you see the use of third-party data in these endeavors?
Okay, so before I just get into the prepared answer, I'd say that, yeah, a lot of brands have got first-party data sort of strategies down on paper, and they kind of know what they want to do, but they're not ready to do it. I think that what the reality is that it's often patchy. So readiness, I think, depends on two things. You've got, infrastructure. So going back to that, can they actually unify the data across different teams, formats, channels, and systems? And activation partners. So who's going to actually help them get this done, extend and enrich that first party with third party sort of overlays. And I think that's going back to overlays and what I was saying with third party. That's where third party data is actually good, but really good third party data is what's crucial here. Modeling, scaling, and building audiences that sort of fill that blind spot is what first party data strategies actually need. So what we're sort of looking at doing is bringing first party data to the forefront, from taking it from sitting in a CRM and actually being able to turn it into something that becomes a marketable audience. That's the crucial part of taking good third-party data and overlaying it and using it from that perspective. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. So the last two, so understand and attribute sales. So the first problem, you're unable to prove ROI. So you could use third-party data assets like transactional spend, or it could be mobility data, to track incrementality and market impact. So a lot of some of this stuff, you see a lot of good examples of it in the market. I don't think it's widely used enough, but there are certainly good examples out there. And channel fragmentation, making it difficult to get a full picture. So again, this comes down to, this is something that really does require this ID graph solution. So if you think, as an example, in a given household, people have an average of 7 devices. They might start their journey on a mobile phone, but they actually convert on a laptop, or the other way around. What an identity resolution does is bring these identifiers into a household to give you a clearer view on that customer journey, and to be able to measure their journey more effectively. And the last one, so personalize. So the messaging is not cutting through. So propel and personalize CRM comms. Again, this is not new, but I'm always surprised at how many people take, even for instance, our data assets, but don't actually use them in CRM selections. So personalize some of their outbound emails. So again, not a new thing, but I think not done enough, and certainly something that people should be do more of. Website experience resulting in poor drop-offs. Again, I would say, and I would love for someone to challenge me later, because I'm always interested to learn what is new in the market, that we are relatively unique here. So you can personalize web visits by linking unknown visits to insight. So again, that comes back to that example I gave earlier, where you look to take an IP address, match it to a household, and return insight for an insight report. If you think we can actually now do that, and this was only launched about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We have our product team in here, actually. I can see Erica, where we can now do that in real time. So if somebody lands on your website, they're unknown, we collect their IP address, you send it to Experian, Experian resolves it to household, and returns, as one example, just a Mosaic code. But there's me talking about Mosaic when I said we're not just Mosaic, but any demographic or any behavioral or purchase level data that we have, so you can personalize that experience for that unknown user. So Matt, personalization. Is personalization the holy grail? Is it holy grail worth chasing, in your view?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Is it a holy grail that's worth chasing? Yes. But I think the thing about personalization is that we need to wrap our heads around the fact that it's not thousands and thousands of ad variations. And what I mean by that is that it's what we're actually trying to chase is the relevance at the right moment. So what makes it worthwhile is that it's going to obviously drive performance, and what we need to do that is sort of real-time inputs, clean identities, and resolutions from that point of view. So yeah, the grail is probably real, and we should be chasing it. But I think what we really need to wrap our heads around is that it's not, the grail itself is not magic. It's just really, really good infrastructure and plumbing in the back end, and getting our piping right from that point of view and the right data. And that leads into the better personalization point of view. Yeah.
I'd agree with that. All right. Well, look, we can wrap it up. What to take away? So firstly, data is now cool. Put this in because MadFest, the theme this year is Be Less Boring. I think some context behind that. I think that data sort of 15 or 10 years ago was seen as massively boring. I don't think it necessarily is. Now you only sort of have to look at AI and how data is the ingredient that underpins that, or watch one season of Black Mirror to see that it underpins the entire script of that.
We're not the nerds anymore.
We're not the nerds, yeah. So it's definitely cool, and it's something that we certainly should be embracing as young and old marketeers. Third-party data offers scale, breadth, and quality, and first-party data can easily be amplified with a trusted third-party data partner. Thanks again, Ema, for that one. So look, thank you for your time. That is a QR code to my LinkedIn. If you do want to connect, if you want to carry on a conversation, then please do that. We also have a picnic table wherever the picnic tables are, so please do come and stop by. I think there's about 15 of the Experian team here today. So yeah, please do speak to you and speak to us, and thank you, Matt, as well.
Yeah.
Cheers.